comic books, cause I don't wanna look at nothing. This world's too much. I swallowed all I could.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trade Talk. This is episode 41, and I'm your host, Niko. I hope everybody is staying safe and healthy out there with everything that we still got going on. You know, I must say it at the start of every episode because, you know, it's kind of what we're currently dealing with. So, yeah, I cannot mean that enough. And I hope everybody's taking some time there to, you know, hang out inside, you know, with your loved ones and take a moment to social distance, but still interacting with people online, you know, getting your kicks in where you can, right? So I understand. I mean, it's a hard time for everybody out there, and you gotta just stay positive and see this through. All right, so without further ado, and thank you for tuning in. If you listen to this show, I really appreciate it. Let me know what you think if you have any comments about the show. Let's get into it, though. I read 3 books this past week. I always feel that, like, I should be reading more when I come to this you know, to record every episode. It just kind of fluctuates, and, like, even with everything going on, like, I'm still working. You know, I'm deemed essential, kind of what I do. So at the same time, I haven't had as much time as I would like to read still, even with everything going on. But, you know, I always try to at least come here with 3 different things to talk about. So in doing that, I've succeeded this week once again. So, all right. So first up, we got the Bunker Vol.1. This is by Oni Press. I don't know if I've talked about any Oni Press books on here. I don't think I read much things from their output the things they put out. I find I might have talked about something on here before. I'm not sure. Anyways, this is written by Joshua Hale Fialkov, who you don't hear much from these days. I find. I don't know if that's because he was bad in the business. I don't know if he did something. I don't know if he's just not somebody who kind of made a bad name for himself. I just don't find that we see too many things from him anymore, and I felt that he was a pretty interesting voice in comics. I liked a lot of the things I've read by him, but yeah, for whatever reason, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm just not to throw things out there that may not be true. I really just don't know the reasoning behind it. I know that I've read a lot of things of his that I've liked. The Bunker being one of them. I used to read this in issues when it was coming out originally, then I dropped it and just picked up the trades, and that's why I'm talking about Volume 1 here today. But yeah, no, he's good, and the artist is Joe Infiernari. I've read a couple things by him as well that he was an artist on. You know, not my favorite art style, very messy, very sketchy looking, like, he's a good storyteller. He definitely is a good artist. I just mean his style specifically. It's not usually my cup of tea. I like sketchy. I like messy. I like that kind of stuff. It's just that his character work, like his characters, the way he makes them look, and like his actual style wouldn't fit a lot of stuff. Like, I think you'd be hard pressed to see him do anything in the superhero genre, like any of your big 2 books, which is fine. Like, you don't need to be an artist, and sometimes having interesting artists, sometimes when they do these kind of things where they bring in interesting artists for that kind of stuff, and they actually excel at it, and it's a nice welcome change of pace. But I don't think he's one of those artists, though, that you would see do that, and nor does he need to, and I don't think he has done any big 2 work from everything at least I've seen from him. Again, that's fine. I just it's just his style. It's not as I don't know, it's just not something I kind of gravitate towards, although I like his stuff. I think it's got a good mixture of, like, I don't know, I wouldn't say Sienkiewicz, but at the same time it's like one of those things where it's like I don't know many artists that have this type of style, so it's definitely unique in that sense. Yeah, so so check it out. If you're not familiar with his work, take a look. He did another comic that he self-published called Time Fucker, and I grabbed the 2 issues that he had on him one time when I seen him at a convention, TCAF, actually, here in Toronto, which is like a lot more indie guys and stuff are usually there. Not always, but yeah, that's usually, people that are kind of doing more self-published work or lesser known work and stuff like that are usually at these kind of conventions. They're not like the big name conventions that you look for, like big names at. Although there's been plenty of those too with the last few years with the Image, a lot of the big creators that came through there. Like I seen Ed Brubaker there, Darwin Cook before he died did a great talk there. But yeah, this isn't about TCAF, I know, but it's just a great show, and unfortunately it's not happening this year because of everything going on. So I felt I should quickly mention that. But that's where I picked up those issues from him. Those were really fun. And I know he's continued to do other work through Image. I just haven't read it, the series that he's currently doing. I forgot the name of it. But yeah, The Bunker. I liked this series when it first came out. I just thought that the pacing would be better served in a trade paperback, so I ended up dropping it. And rereading every issue that was in this volume, I've read before. It's been quite a while since I've read them, but this collected the first 4 issues. I think the first issue was oversized, and I still dig it. Basically, it's this thing where like these group of friends and people that they know each other for a long time. I guess they're late teens, adults, early like young 20s at this point, maybe late teens. I'm not 100% on that, but yeah, they're still young at this point. They find this bunker essentially that has like all these letters and things that are gonna describing what's gonna happen to them in the future, and basically like messages from their future selves, essentially. Like, you know how like people do those little time capsule type things, but instead in this, they actually uncovered this bunker that had all these warnings from the future of what's gonna happen. And as a result of finding this, some of them are shocked at some of the revelations, like some of the things that they became in the future, some of the things they are looking to like expect out of what happened with their futures. So much so that it's actually affecting their present. Like they're making decisions based on this information that they found. Some people can't hardly believe some of the things they're reading. Some people are, of course, correcting their own lives as a result of what had happened in this to catastrophic kind of results. So it's interesting because this basically unfolds and plays out the rest of the series, which I've never finished. There's 4 volumes, I believe, of this, which I have all of them. So I'm looking forward to reading the rest and coming back and talking about it on here, hopefully in the next few weeks. But yeah, that's basically where this is. And then like the one guy, Grady, who's part of the group, he in the future is like a big part of it. I think he either becomes the president or some sort of like big figurehead in politics or the government. And he comes in this issue. He came from the future. Like after they discover this bunker, he actually comes and confronts one of his other friends, while the present him is also out walking around like during this period of time. But they don't meet up till the end of this issue where he reveals himself to the whole group. But at first he comes back and just reaches out and speaks to one of the guys who didn't have a letter. Like there was no letter for him that he found in the bunker originally. So he got really freaked out because he didn't really know what his future held. But then it turns out he's seen some some found footage he finds of himself, like giving him that message that he knows he would stick around and do what was right if he kind of purposely left his letter not included with everybody else's. So it was actually like a planned move on his part from his future self to do it that way. But not everything seems to be on the level. Like you're getting these messages from this future Grady who no one knows how where he is currently at in the future, like what exactly happened. And while all this is going on, you're getting some sequences they're showing you from future events with these characters, and then they're flashing back to like the current time and day of these kids that we're following. So they're kind of showing you both sides of things where they kind of would end up eventually, while at the same time they're trying to kind of come to terms with this shit that basically they found and are trying to follow in their present day time, right? So yeah, and just certain decisions that they make. Like there's one girl that was this part's a little, I don't know. I don't like the way it was presented in. I don't mind the actual the choice to do it, I guess, because we've seen in other storytelling. I don't know if it was really necessary. so far in this current story, but basically you find out one of the girls was sexually molested as a kid by one of her uncles. So then now she, in her letter to herself, I guess is something that's always kind of given her problem. She basically said, like, he continues to do this to other kids, and this is where he lives, and this is basically what happens to him in the future. So if you want to change something about that or do something about it, do it now, kind of thing. And basically, like, she ends up saying to herself in the letter that she does pay him back for what he did in the future. Like, she goes and sees him when he's older and he's like senile and can barely remember shit. So, and she punishes him. So I guess she ended up killing him or doing something to him in the future. And her future self is telling her this in the letter. But basically, she found all this stuff out and figures that she might do something about it now as a result of, like, all the shit that kind of it caused her over the years. So yeah, there's things like that. Like, people are finding out things that are influencing their decisions in the present day, and whether or not that's going to actually fuck things up, because, you know, with timelines and time travel and this kind of shit, it's, you know what I mean? Like, will everything that's meant to be eventually circle around and come back and actually end up happening the way it was supposed to as a result of their decisions, right? And that's the whole thing about that whole you know, time as a flat circle shit that they talked about in that that show, True Detective, or if you guys are familiar with that. So that yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, is everything that is they said is going to happen still going to happen the same way as a result of their decisions at this point in time. So it's just interesting in that sense. I'm interested to see where it goes. I probably read about 2 volumes of the 4 volumes that I have worth of issues. This is only up to issue 4, but like I said, the first issue is oversized, so it's a, you know, like a regular 5-issue kind of story arc, trade paperback. This one, I believe, was retailed, the one that I'm holding here, for $19.99. But I think since then, I think that there is a cheaper $9.99 version to kind of get you in on the ground floor of this series. I might be wrong about that, but I believe there's been a second printing of the Bunker that is cheaper, the first volume. So definitely look into that, because it's a steal if that is the case, and they did make a cheaper available volume. If not, it's still a good series, I think, worth checking out. Interesting art, good storytelling from a writer who, like I said, doesn't do much these days. As far as I know, I haven't seen or read anything from him in a while, but I think he was an interesting voice in comics back when I first discovered him. All right, next up, we got the Maxx, Maxxed Out Volume 1, which, you know, this one's actually a pretty big volume. This is 12 issues of the Maxx. This is the Image series from back in the day from Sam Keith. I guess famously, you know, he came with the second wave of interesting artists through Image Comics. A lot of people, if you're my age, may remember that this was actually also a cartoon back in the day. I remember me specifically, it was on like the After Dark, like the more like mature cartoon network type. Well, it's on Teletoon here in Canada. I don't know where, like, what it would be. It's like the equivalent of like a Cartoon Network, I guess, in the States. At past a certain time, certain nights of the week, they would have the more mature content cartoons on at that period in time, and the Maxx was part of that. And I always was interested from the look and feel of that cartoon and how crazy it was to know more about this. But, like, I didn't read the Maxx back when I was younger. Like, I wasn't part of the whole, I didn't read into a lot of the Image boom type stuff, and I didn't, I didn't, like, I knew it was a comic, and I knew that was the inspiration of the cartoon, but it was just so strange of a cartoon. Like, I got my fill of the Maxx with that, and I didn't really know of Sam Keith back then, and so now, like, you know, flash to me now, like, knowing and learning about Sam Keith and how interesting and unique of an art style he has, even for artists back then. This is definitely something I'm like, well, I got to check this out. And I had picked up a lot of the older printings of the paperbacks were out of print. So I picked up, I think, the first couple of volumes years ago. I read them. I was very interested in it to continue. And then until recently, I guess a few years ago now, though, they recently reprinted through IDW Comics and recolored all of that material. So some of the old comics, I guess some of the colors didn't do it justice, but I think with Sam Keith's involvement, they've recolored all of this, all of his issues, and they came out with these maxed out editions. First, they came out in oversized hardcovers, but they were only collecting like a few issues per hardcover, so I didn't pick it up that way, although I would have liked the oversized art in them. I picked up these paperback versions that came out after the hardcovers, which collected. There's 3 volumes. I think each of them collect like 12 issues. I think the series went 30-something issues. So 3 volumes, 3 paperbacks. They're $30 a piece retail, so you can get them cheaper, even better. But yeah, this is a good chunk of comics here and a good chunk of history of that time in the 90s where Image had this fucking weird book. I think originally it came out from Image. I know that the printings afterwards, the older ones that I had, came out from Wildstorm Homage Comics. So I don't know if eventually it went over to DC. I don't know if the whole run was printed at Image and then they came out through DC. Maybe they reprinted collections through that. That I don't know. I don't know the history of that. I mean, this is Sam Keith's creation, but also what's his name, Mesner Loebs. Also, I guess, wrote this. He wrote the actual script, William Mesner Loebs, and I guess Sam Keith kind of contributed to the story. So I guess it's both their creation. Well, Sam Keith created it, and Mesner Loebs came around for the ride and helped him actually script the book. But it's a fucking weird book, man. It's out there, and at times it's hard to follow. But the art is great. The art is so inventive and interesting in different forms of artistic things that he was trying to implement in this, like all kinds of different media, the way he's and styles that he's implementing throughout this book. You got like great pencil and ink work, but on top of that, it looks like he's painting some of it. Sometimes on top of that, he's doing all kinds of different panel breakups. Like, he does like some traditional panel work when it's needed in some of these stories, but then other times he's jumping on, panel breaking all over the place, doing art all over the page. It looks like I said, there's some painted stuff and different things that he brought to it. Not one issue, I think, from issue to issue looks the same, and he can break out into any different types of styles and uniqueness. Maybe pencil crayon, maybe, I don't know, like in some of this, like he looks like he's using I mean, again, I'm not even really sure some of the time. It's just a lot of interesting kind of artwork throughout this, and the panel work is all interesting layouts every issue. Just really, really something, and you definitely got to check this out. But yeah, basically the Maxx, I'd be hard pressed to explain it, but if I had to say, I would say it's about a guy who's a homeless guy who thinks he's this superhero, the Maxx, and there's all these. He's living in this world where the main girl in the story, there's all these types of different realities, like her actual. Mindscape, like her actual mind works in a way where he can actually, there's something called like the Outback, where he goes into this, so there's a real world and then there's like some imaginary world that takes place outside of her head, like her actual mind, like it actually creates like an imaginary world outside of itself that the Maxx is able to enter along with her, and then he's someone else, and it's this world where it's like kind of it's like he's like almost like a Tarzan type character. Like they live in like the Outback, like there's wild animals and weird things all over the place, and he's stronger in this world. So like he's got the world that's inside of his head, and the world that's inside of this girl's head. You find out who's like a social worker, but again, she's had some problems when she was younger too. Also, I think. Sexual like kind of molestation issues. Like there's a lot of Sam Keith kind of taps into a lot of things like in his other works too, where it's kind of self-analyzing women, and like like in this she dresses very, like a lot of people would be quick to call her like a whore, the way like she dresses, like she dresses like a prostitute, they say in this throughout this, but then she's like actually like a girl who acts almost like a social worker and tries to help people and doesn't care how she dresses, and it's kind of like like empowering woman, like this is kind of the way I choose to show myself, like that's not who I am kind of thing, and so there's that, and there's a lot of analyzation about that kind of stuff in this, and like as well as more darker theme type 90s stuff, like Troubled Kids and like gothic type stuff and like this kind of things, right? And then but then at the same time it's cartoony. Like there's a whole issue where like he basically it's drawn in like a cartoon style, where it's like a Looney Tunes cartoon, and like he's sitting there watching TV in her house, and all of a sudden it's like you're transformed as the readers of continuing to tell this story inside of like a cartoon world. And then there's 2-issue crossover with Pitt, like the character Pitt from Image back in the day that comes into this. But in this story, he's way different than you would have seen him inside of the actual Pitt comic. And like there's all these imaginary beings, like we see them as like little, like the Maxx can see through it to the point where like there's like these things called is or something, like they're like these white or black kind of like little shrimpy guys, and they disguise themselves as other people in the human world, but the Maxx can actually see through that and actually see like which one, like, so to the human eye we're seeing these people as actual people, but the is are actually impersonating people in our lives like cops or what have you. But it turns out they're actually like imaginary little creatures that the Maxx is only able to see, right? So to people outside looking in, a lot of the times he looks like a crazy fucking homeless person in this crazy outfit, and he's massive. He's this massive dude, and he's got these claws at the end of his like hands in this costume. And then, you know, you just kind of follow the weird fucking adventures of him throughout this world, and you don't really know what's real, what's reality, what's you know, in his head or in this girl's head, and where he's playing in and as a superhero or as this weird fucking, you know, character. So yeah, this must sound really fucking weird to you, but like I said, it's a weird book, and this is my second time reading some of these issues. Not the whole thing. I have never read all 12 issues that are collected in here. So again, I have the other 2 volumes, so I hope to talk more about it as the weeks go on. But I had a lot of fun reading this, and just for the art alone, I think it's an interesting thing to dive into. You may not make the most sense in the world to you. Some of the dialogue at times is hard to follow. It's not the best, but overall, I think it's a great reading experience. So definitely check that out, the Maxx. And last but not least, we got the Complete Battlefields Volume 2. This is the second of a 3-volume series from Dynamite Comics of Garth Ennis's Battlefields, more war comics from the war comics master himself. I don't know if I've talked about Garth Ennis's war comics on here. I might have talked about his Tanks miniseries in some of the earlier episodes that I read. That was probably the last thing I read by him that was like that. I mean, I love this series. This is great. I've owned these for a while. I've only read the first volume, loved it, ended up finding the next 2 volumes. These are the hardcovers, but it also comes in paperback. Some of these might be hard to find. These were very out of print at the time I found all 3 of them, and that was like years ago, so I can't see them having had reprinted this, so you might have a little trouble finding these. Maybe you can find them online. But again, this is Dynamite Comics, Garth Ennis, 3 different artists. He has 3 different miniseries of 3 issues in this. You know, Garth Ennis writes his war comics all over the place. Any company that will have him, it seems like, to have him do these war comics. But this guy, this is stuff he's actually interested in. Like, he does a lot of research for these. These are all like historically accurate. He gives you a lot of the notes and the stories that his ideas came from. Even at the back of this book has a ton of extras, sketches from the artist, as well as him breaking down where he kind of did the research and found the ideas for all of these stories that he did in this volume. So this is something he's very passionate about. If you don't know, Garth Ennis is very, like, he kind of works in like a war story, it seems like, into everything he's ever done. But like when he just sits here and does these pure like war story type comics where it's just like him commenting on a certain period of time of certain types of people in the war and certain aspects of their job in the war, it's just like he just does it so well. And I don't think I'd be as interested in other war comics from other people, but I'm such a Garth Ennis fan. I always give these a try. I always end up enjoying them. He doesn't, like I said, he's just so good at doing it. In this volume, it collects Battlefields 1 to 3, Happy Valley, Battlefields 4 to 6, The Firefly and His Majesty, and Battlefield 7 to 9, Motherland. So yeah, it's I guess it came through in the original Battlefield series, but it was 3 individual storylines, 3 issues each of 3 different times in the war, different people you're following. And the first one, it's Russia. You're following Russian air fighters. And the second one, I think it's Happy Valley. I think it was Australians. And then the third one, you're following, I think, British tank guys versus Germans, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, the first two about air fighters. The third one is about tanks. I actually love the stuff that he does with tanks the most usually. But this one, the second story, Happy Valley, that was my favorite of all these. So the first one's drawn by Russ Braun, Motherland. The second one, Happy Valley, drawn by P.J. Holden. And the third one is penciled by Carlos Esquerra. All people he's worked with before, all people that I think that have done other war stuff with him. I love Russ Braun's work, love Carlos Esquerra's work. He did a lot of stuff for, even 2000 AD. I think he's part of that group. He did, Judge Dredd and all that kind of stuff. His work's awesome. P.J. Holden, I've seen him do other things. I think he even did one of the Tanks miniseries, the World of Tanks miniseries through Dark Horse Comics as well. I don't know how long he's been doing comics work, but this stuff didn't look as good as some of the other things I've seen him do. So I don't know if this is just early P.J. Holden or if this isn't just his best work. It was fine. I didn't mind it. The good thing about this is, too, I'm sure Garth Ennis, having worked with all these people, is basically just, brought in his own artist for this through Dynamite. Because, again, Dynamite normally doesn't have... Well, I can't say that. They've had some good artists. It's kind of a real mixed bag over there for a lot of their books, though. And, Garth Ennis doing his thing like this, it being Garth Ennis, and having worked with all these people, I just feel that he was probably able to get all these people to work with him over there, because I can't say that I've seen them do much work, these artists, over at Dynamite, other than the stuff I've seen them do here with Garth Ennis. So all great artists, all top-notch artists for these stories, all did a great job. My favorite probably being Carlos Esquerra, though, at the in the third story with the tanks. Again, I think he also did some stuff in World of Tanks, if I'm not mistaken. I just love his art style, and Russ Braun was right there with him. P.J. Holden, like I said, I've seen better, but I think that story was my favorite, though, and it wasn't a bad job he did either. It was my favorite because it was about these air fighters that there's a new rookie that comes in, and all the old guys are kind of worried and concerned that he's joining their crew. Because he's green, he hasn't seen that much war, and these guys are almost on their 30th kind of roundabout, going out toward a duty type thing, they're like a mission of attack, I guess, whatever, during the war. And they're nearing the end of their run, and they're going to be discharged soon. They've had put in their time for this war, already. And one of the seasoned guys, this new hot shot pilot that they heard about, that's apparently well regarded, and some guy probably right out of the academy, whatever, he's got people that are backing him that think he's really good, and they're speaking highly of him. But as soon as they hear that he's not experienced, they're like, fuck this kid, he's gonna kill us all out there, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And then they get into two air fights where he ends up saving them both times, both separate occasions. And through all this, they get to know each other, and they actually end up really liking this kid. And then by the end of it, they're on their last time out before all the other guys get discharged, because they've been doing it for quite a while. But this kid, he's just joined them, so he's got 20-something more outings than they do coming up for him. And the guy gives him a piece of advice on the last way out. He's like, listen, I'm going to be done after this, but you are going to still be out there for quite a while without us, and I'm worried about you, that we're not going to be here with you anymore. And, you know what I mean? Just do your duty, do what you got to do, and then get out. Don't take this shit home with you and all of that. He's all this war, basically saying, all this war is bullshit and all this kind of stuff. And you know what I mean? I know you're a big, you think you're a big hero and all this kind of stuff, but it's not worth it, kind of thing, right? At the end of the day. So they go out on their last mission with this kid, at least theirs, all these vets, and he ends up dying. He ends up dying in it, and then they basically have to go home now, knowing this. And he was worried about when they left. What was going to happen to him, but he ended up saving that one guy who got to know him, the guy who doubted him the most, ended up saving him, even though they were in the same fighter pilot, he did some sort of move where he ended up surviving, and the other kid got killed. And at the end of it, he was just basically, he felt really bad about what had happened, and he's like, okay, he had a journal that he was writing to his father, that we were following some of the writings that he was doing in the journal from the first issue, and just describing what was going on. And the guy that was going through all his stuff that they kind of need to send back home is like, well, I can't let this go through. If it gets intercepted, like there's a lot of information in here about, you know, what we do, and I can't have the risk of this happening. So the guy's like, well, I'm going on my way home. Why don't you give it to me, and I will bring it to his father, because that's all he has. Because he got to know the kid, and he found out like he only had his father, the rest of his family is dead, and it would mean a lot to him, and blah 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 blah. So it was just like, it was a nice little heartwarming story. I will say, I'm not going to go into all three stories here, but they were all excellent. And Garth Ennis, the thing he does better than anybody else when he does these war comics, is he gets you to relate to these characters. Like, he finds something interesting about each one of them, each story, that, you know, if you can know dick all about war, or the accuracy of the things he's talking about, and he's telling you everything, he knows what he's talking about, but like, you don't know about the fighter pilots, you don't know about the tanks, you don't know about the you know, this, like, the sides, like who's facing who. You don't know much about war or history or any of that, and I know some, and I learned more from reading these, but you don't need to know any of that, because he has all that in his stories, but then at the heart of it, he kind of gets you get to know these characters, and he picks certain specific things you wouldn't think about, and things to latch on to that make his war stories interesting. So, yeah, that's what I mean. So, like, at the end of the day, this was just a story about a hero in the war, and like, just like, you know, just people like thinking, like, judging a book by its cover before they actually even knew the individual, just because of being, you know, doing this for so long, and meanwhile, this kid was the biggest hero in this whole story. You know what I mean? So things like that. And I really appreciate it. I think he just does it better than anybody else, and they're definitely worth checking out. That's Battlefields from Dynamite Comics, Garth Ennis. Great artists on all of them. Definitely check that series out if you have never. Okay, and that's going to do it for me today, guys. I hope you guys, again, are all staying safe out there, and we'll see you guys next time.